Let's go JavaScripting! Hi everybody and welcome to another exciting edition of Boring JavaScript. I'm your host, the Virtuoid, aka Mike Smith, and today we're going to be talking about the Speech Synthesis API. Now, have you ever wanted your browser to talk back to you? Yeah, you're right, neither have I. But anyway, you could use the Speech Synthesis API to take text that you have on the browser and use the browser's native voice to talk back to you through the speakers on your computer. Want to see how it works? Let's get started. Now, the Speech Synthesis API is extremely easy to use. First of all, what you create is what they call an utterance, and this utterance contains the text that you're going to want to have the browser talk. Now, I'm not going to cover utterances within the scope of this episode. That will be for a later point in time. But after you create the utterance, then you send it off to the Speech Synthesis object, which is a global object on the window global object, to be able to actually speak it. So let's take a look and see what it does here. So this is the HTML file that I have, and it's just, we're going to just simply, as you can tell here, just type in whatever within the text box, click on say it, and it should say it. Let's take a look at the code. The code is extremely easy to use. Here's my event listener for the click event for the say it button, and this is all there really is to it. Like I said, it's very easy to use. Here's our utterance, and this is where we're creating a new instance of the Speech Synthesis utterance and passing to it the text we're going to speak, which in this case is the value of the input element. And then all I have to do to get it to talk is that. Now, Speech Synthesis is an object that is within the window global object. So basically, it is a global object to all the speech utterances. So what this is telling the Speech Synthesis to do is to basically say, hey, take the utterance that we have just created and send it to the speak command, or pass it to the speak method. And so Speech Synthesis will then take it from that method and put it into the queue, which basically means if it's already talking and doing something else and you add another one here, it's just going to add it to the end and it will start talking as soon as the first one finishes. And if nothing's talking at that point, it will go ahead and throw it in there and start talking. And that's it. There really is nothing else to it. So let's flip back over to our browser and let's type in something here. And hopefully this thing's loud enough to hear it. I won't be able to know until I review the recording here. So what do we want to say? Well, everything's within a hello world, so let's say hello world. Hello world. Here we go.
Hello world.
Isn't that creepy? Yes, it is. Great for Halloween. So this shows you how easy it is to be able to use the Speech Synthesis API. Anything I type in here, it will say automatically, Mary had a little zombie, for example. Let's click say it.
Mary had a little zombie.
Yeah, there we go. Couldn't get simpler. So the next thing I want to show you here is that a couple of things you can do with this is if you are having the Speech Synthesis to talk something that's a very long piece of text, you can actually pause it, resume it, and stop it from talking. And we'll show you all that next. So there are three very important methods you need to know about the Speech Synthesis. That is the pause method, the resume method, and the cancel method. Let's cover all three of those. Now, to be able to show you this, I am going to have my computer act out Hamlet Act 3 Scene 1. So I've got myself a little HTML page there. That's Sarah, by the way, that's Sarah Bernhardt playing Hamlet, probably in the early 1900s. I'm not really sure. The speech itself is going to appear within this white area, and I'm not going to cover what I'm doing with the speech. It's going to kind of scroll up. I'm not worried about that. The important thing are the two buttons down here. Those are going to show, we're going to be using these to be able to show you the three new methods plus the speak method, so 4 methods total on the Speech Synthesis that you're going to need to know about to be able to control the speaking portion. The big stop button will do the stop, and the stop will issue the cancel method. And that's one of the first methods we'll take a look at here. And the cancel method basically stops the utterance and wipes it out of memory. But it does something also very important that I'll show you when we get to the code. The play button here has 3 different functions. If you click the play button and there's no utterance, it will use the speak method like we did before in the first option there to load the utterance into the Speech Synthesis where it will then start playing. That will at that point turn into a pause button. So when I click on the button right there where it's a pause button, it will then it will perform the pause method on the Speech Synthesis, which will stop the talking, the Speech Synthesis, but keep everything within memory. that will turn back into a play icon, which I then click on the play icon, and that will do the resume method, which will resume any paused speech that was currently going on within the speech synthesis. Real simple, real easy to use. Let's take a look at all four of those real quick. Let's flip back over to our code. And first of all, we have the speech itself. To be or not to be, that is the question. Was 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, and so on and so forth. Let's take a look at the routines. This is where I process the play button. And of course, the play button could also be a pause button. So I'm doing pause or play. The speech synthesis has two very important properties on it: the paused property and the speaking property, and those are both Booleans. The pause property is going to tell you whether the current speaking utterance is paused or not. Obviously, the speaking one tells you whether the current utterance is speaking or not. And between the combination of these, we can be able to determine what operation we need to do within the play button. So for instance, if both of these happen to be false, that means I know I have no utterance within the speech synthesis, so I'm going to start the speech. And when we start the speech, we do the speak method. And of course, we covered the speak method in the first section, so all I'm passing to it is the speech I want, the text, which is the speech or the utterance, into the speak method. And the speak method loads it up into the speech synthesis queue and then starts speaking. No big deal there. The next thing here is the paused button set to true. If the pause button is set to true, that means at some point I have already paused the speaking, so then I'm going to do a resume speech. What does the resume speech do? It uses the resume method on the speech synthesis. And I just pass it, and there's no arguments or anything, so I just pass resume. And so if the utterance is already it has been paused, had been speaking, but has been paused, the resume method will start it back up from the point that it had stopped. Finally, if it is speaking, then I'm going to do the pause speech. And what does the pause speech do? Well, it does the pause method, which basically says, hey, if that utterance is speaking, pause it and stop it. Pause it and just kind of keep it in memory until you have something else to do. And that's all the play or pause button does. It doesn't do much of anything else. Finally, the stop button is controlled right here. This is the routine it's called when the stop button is clicked. And we're going to do the stop speech. And what does the stop speech do? The stop speech does the cancel. Now the cancel does two very important things you need to understand. First of all, obviously it stops the playing or the speaking that's occurring. But the most important thing is that it also wipes out or removes the utterance from the queue within the speech synthesis. But not only does it remove the utterance from the queue, but it removes all utterances from the queue. Because the thing here is that if the speech synthesis is speaking and you pop another speech in it, like for instance, if it's in the middle of doing Hamlet and I throw in a Macbeth speech or something, it's just going to put it to the very end of the Hamlet speech and start the Macbeth speech once the Hamlet speech ends. So as you use the speak command, it just keeps popping more onto the queue. But when you use the cancel command, not only does it stop the currently speaking utterance, it wipes everything out of the queue. So it completely wipes out the queue. So if you had 7 utterances in the queue and you hit cancel, they're all gone at that point. So those are the 4 methods. The speak method, which we covered before and we covered real quick here. The resume, which resumes a paused utterance. The pause, which pauses a speaking utterance. And the cancel, which stops everything and wipes it all out of the queue. So let's take a look at our browser. And let's actually run it here. So what's going to happen is that once I start the speech here, I'm at some point going to start the speech by clicking on the play button. And at some point, I'm going to click on the pause button. And that's going to pause the speech. And then I'm going to click on the play button again to show you that it does resume where it had left off. And then I'm going to click on the stop button to show you that, it will stop everything, to show you how it will stop everything. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please give a warm welcome to my Chrome browser running on Windows 10 as it performs Hamlet Act 3, Scene 1.
To be, or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them, to die, to sleep, no more, and by asleep to say we.
Aha! So I hit the pause button at that point, and it said no more, and by asleep to say we, and it stopped at that point. So if I click on the play button here, I should expect it to start hopefully, if my memory serves me correctly, it should start like at the end, heartache and the 1,000 natural shocks. That's where it should start again. So let's see if that happens. And again, what happens, I'll let it go a little bit longer, and then I'll hit the stop button. So here we go. We'll go hit the play button.
And the heartache and the 1,000 natural shocks that flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished. To die, to sleep.
To sleep, to perchance yet... Oh, I'm sorry. It finished up. So I clicked on the stop button there, and it canceled it. Now again, cancel stops the utterance and takes everything out. Now how do I know that? Because if I hit the play button one more time, it should start back at the beginning, because right now it is not paused and it is not speaking. So let's hit the play button and see what happens.
To be, or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles.
And I just hit the pause button again there, so that proved that the cancel took everything out of the queue. And that is how easy and simple it is to use the speech synthesis. So I really encourage you to get out there and see what kind of really scary stuff you can do with all of this. And that's all there is to using the Speech Synthesis API. But before you go, make sure you view past the end of our credits so you can see the entire Hamlet soliloquy as performed by my Chrome browser. So I hope you enjoyed our video. Hope I didn't bore you to death. Please view all of our videos at www.boringjavascript.com. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, or check out everything we have at www.thevirtuoid.com. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you later. Boring JavaScript presents Hamlet, Act 3, Scene 1, as performed by my Chrome browser running on a Windows 10 system.
To be, or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them, to die, to sleep, no more, and by asleep to say we end the heartache and the 1,000 natural shocks that flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished. To die, to sleep, perchance to dream, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death what dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil, must give us pause, there's the respect that makes calamity of so long life. For who would bear the whips and scorns of time? The oppressor's wrong, the proud man's contumely, the pangs of despised love, the law's delay, the insolence of office and the spurns that patient merit of the unworthy takes, when he himself might his quietus make with a bare bodkin. Who would fardels bear, to grunt and sweat under a weary life, but that the dread of something after death, the undiscovered country from whose bourne no traveller returns, puzzles the will and makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others that we know not of? Thus conscience does make cowards of us all, and thus the native hue of resolution is sicklied o'er with the pale cast of thought, and enterprises of great pith and moment with this regard their currents turn awry, and lose the name of action. Soft you now, the fair Ophelia, nymph, in thy orisons be all my sins remembered.